some of the questions you were saying about how long this coalition can actually last when we have a coalition of people who are well-to-do and wealthy, and they're very suspicious of tax hikes or tax hikes even for the purposes of programs that would help people in this coalition.
Sure. So one of uh, the odd realities of U.S. politics is that the working class or lower class types are split across the parties in not maybe not even proportion, but they're not able to form a bloc in one party altogether, which is what you see in other countries, in the Nordic countries, which are the ones that I study. Certainly in the middle of the 20th century, almost everyone, if you were a laborer, a lower class laborer or a pensioner or whatever, you were in the Social Democratic Party, period. And
Hmm.
if you were management or whatever, you were in the sort of right wing party. And if you were a farmer, they had like this farmers party, and they usually teamed up with the Social Democrats. Like there was a very clear coalition, and you could understand how everyone in those parties, how their interests meld. In the U.S., we have these weird parties where the Democrats have a lot of upper scale white people who are mostly socially liberal, but really are not that interested in
Hmm.
upping taxes, and they're,
Hmm.
they're kind of Bloomberg types almost. And then you also just have a lot of poor people, especially black people and Latinos, but also some poor whites, a decent, I mean, we say that, poor whites are racist and they all vote for Republicans, but, really it's 30, 40%, 30% of them will vote for Democrats. That's one in three. It's not nobody,
Right, right.
especially since whites are such a big portion of the overall population. And it's just this weird tension. And it's hard to see going forward how that's going to play out because and Ross Douthat of all people was actually making this point on Twitter yesterday. The culture war stuff in some ways seems won. We have the transgender
Hmm.
stuff still ahead of us, but that almost looks like for sure that's going to be won. It's not going to be a 20-year battle to
Right.
have gender neutral bathrooms. And so once you get past that point, what is it that binds,
Hmm.
lower class, especially people of color, to upper class whites who are interested in social liberalism, but don't,
Economically
there's nothing,
conservative.
there's no,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no social liberalism to be got. It's already been got.
Right.
So what are you going to do? Are you once the Republican kind of cleans out and becomes less, anti-gay or whatever? Are you going to see them go over to the Republicans? Are they going to be more appealing to Republicans, um, or I like I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on how the coalition would change?
I think the coalition is changing before our eyes right now. For that exact reason, because you have the rest of us, right? You have the working class, and not just the working class, but like the lower middle class and those who just live in paycheck to paycheck. A lot of us are waking up to the fact that the Democratic Party is not really doing anything for us economically, but protecting and securing the those who make enough money to not want any additional tax hikes and not have any need for government programs for assistance, even if it's some type of student loan forgiveness. They make enough money; they've already paid off their student loans, right? So we're in a coalition that's not tenable economically. And you're right. Like, what happens when it's over socially, and all of these social bigots are pariah, right? So there's really going to be no reason for us to have this coalition. I think that's already started because the way the Democratic Party has had to use everything and the kitchen sink to oppose Bernie Sanders, they have publicly, in my opinion, gone against any economic populism. Like, they have completely derided the concept of economic populism, to the detriment of their party, and now to the realization for the rest of us to say, it's time for something different, or it's time for us to overtake this party, or it's time to do something, but we can't sit in this coalition quietly anymore. And the irony of it is, Donald Trump is helping to expedite this by pushing away those Republicans who are not social pariah, who are not, I mean,
Yes.
he's pushing them like like, you know, like the plague out of the Republican Party over into the Democratic Party. And now that's the party that should have existed in the first place, right? As you compare it to the Nordic countries, the party and it's not true to history, but just kind of by virtue of the names, you know, historically it was the Democratic Republican Party, or the Republican Democratic Party. I forgot which one was first, but they were together originally. And now it seems like it's time for them to get back together because economically they're on the same page in many ways, give or take a few percentage points on the top marginal rate. Socially, they are merging, and Donald Trump is purging the Republican Party on that. And foreign policy, they are consistent on this, either a straight neoconservative policy or a soft neoconservative policy, but it's still a neoconservative foreign policy. So they have more in common than they would ever have with working class black people or working class white people who really are saying we're struggling. So to answer your question, I think it's happening right now before our eyes, and it's really being helped by Hillary Clinton being so far to the right and Donald Trump pushing those people who were just close to center. They're pushing them into the arms of Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, the Donald Trump point is an interesting one. It's hard for me to think about how that's going to shake out. So the analysts say, you know, that Donald might push, you might like business conservatives, or they always use suburban white women who are making, you know, 150 a year or something. They'll go over into the Democratic Party, and because, you know, they can't deal with ban Muslims, and you know, like that's
they can't go that
too
far.
Much for them.
Right. They can't go far as building a wall. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. But then that changes the Democratic composition, because now you have even more of that sort of upper class Bloomberg type that is, you know, in the coalition, and now you got to deal with those people. And how are you going to keep those people in once Donald gets out of the way? You got to keep ramping up the idea that we're never going to raise taxes on anyone, you know, making less than, you know, $1 million or whatever. You're gonna it's gonna become even more precarious if the Dems expand their coalition by bringing those people in.
But it's going to become precarious for those of us further to the left who are demanding that the government actually promote the general welfare, right? Those of us who are saying use our tax dollars to make a better society, even for people who are on the margins economically. You know, it's precarious for us, but I think we've already found that it's already precarious just by virtue of this primary.
Yeah. I mean, in the long run, in the short run, there's this issue of if they can bring those Donald Trump, the people who are repulsed by him over, then they can ignore the left even more, because they're able to build on that right wing of the party. But then in the long run, you know, all the young people of all stripes are basically for Bernie and Bernie-style politics. And, you know, they're only going to become more and more influential as they age. And so there's this real tension that's going to build, I think. And I don't know how they're going to deal with that. And it might be the only way to resolve that tension is a realignment where the Republican Party becomes, you know, less racist and less socially conservative, and then that brings a lot of Democrats over, including maybe even upper class Latinos and black people and that kind of thing, who are, you know, maybe more fiscally conservative and that kind of thing.
Yep. I think you said something in there that really jumped out to me, and I started reading a note from my producer. Damn it, David, you threw me off, David. I was listening. Hell, shit, I done forgot now, man. It was, but I agree. I think with everything that you just said, but I think the realignment is happening now, and I think it started not just because of the people running from the Republican Party, but it started because the Democratic Party had to pull out all of the stops to suppress this progressive movement. And that included going against things that have been in the standard lexicon for the Democrats, right? They've gone against it so much that in a way, for those that are actively engaged, right? There's a whole lot of people who don't know what the hell is going on right now. But those who are actively engaged, you see that the Democrats have turned coat on single payer. They've turned coat on. I mean, hell, they already got rid of and gutted welfare. Obama himself gutted food stamps by $8 billion or so, give or take a billion. We've seen them do it progressively. And that's the wrong word to use there. We've seen them do it incrementally over the last 30, 40 years. But in this election alone, they have had to damn all of these progressive ideas and rewrite what it means to be a progressive just to beat this movement that Bernie Sanders put together. So I think the real question, and I want to get give you the last word and get your feedback on this thought. I think the real question is how Bernie Sanders supporters, millennials, young people, and the older people who support Bernie Sanders, how effective can they be electorally? Because if they can form a coalition outside of the mainstream and be effective electorally, then that would solidify this this theorized realignment that we're discussing.
Yeah, and that's really the $1 million question, I guess. When the campaign ends, a lot of people may disengage and the
Yep.
whole thing just kind of fizzles out. Or I guess the consensus seems to be that the next move is to kind of go locally and use our sort of activist energy to overwhelm the party and local races and stuff like that, where people are maybe paying less attention. And I don't know. I have no idea if that's going to happen or not. Bernie's kind of old,
Yeah.
if the Bernie brand, I don't know how long the Bernie brand's going to be here to coordinate people. But, right now it seems like he's able to kind of point people at candidates and it just like shoots a money gun at them every time he does it. So that's kind of promising if that's able to last, because if Bernie can basically curate candidates and people trust his judgment on that, then we might be able to swing some primaries and get some good people in there to slowly build the movement. Sort of Tea Party style, I guess, is the way that
Well, they already call
people.
us. They already call us Tea Partiers, the Tea Party of the
Yeah,
left.
yeah,
Yep.
we're the Tea
Matt,
Party left.
hey,
But hey, they were effective.
exactly. Don't discount your enemy just because you don't like them. They had effective strategies, but that's a whole different conversation I want to have with you on another day.